What are some of those red flags that you notice that you would avoid if you were a client shopping for a marketing agency?
If they haven't been in business very long, that's the number one red flag, which is hard because we all started somewhere. But I mean, I feel like agencies are in and out of business in 6 months all the time because people, again, they have a computer and the internet and they think they can run an agency.
I would say, what does reporting look like? What data are you going to be using to guide my strategy? And then I want to know about the customer service piece. My background is more on the customer service side. I've started a marketing agency, but my background is more customer service sales. But I would want to say quantify the customer service to me as well.
I definitely agree with the service piece for sure. And I think even little things, how quick do they get back to you? Do they do what they say? You know, all those just basic business practices that I think show that are green flags for any business, I think are extra important in this.
Welcome to SEO On-Air. I'm your host, Koa Kauwe. This is brought to you by Stan Ventures. Today, I have 3 guests on with us. They'll have a chance to introduce themselves in more depth, but we're going to be discussing the state of marketing today and specifically what it takes to run a successful marketing agency. I think we're going to poke some holes into some of the areas of marketing that have been frustrating for customers and clients, and just dive into what agencies are looking at to be successful in the future and what how they're trying to position themselves today. So with that said, I wanted to have, again, thank you for the 3 of you joining me today. Give you each a chance to introduce yourselves. Emily, I'll start with you. Please tell us a little bit about your background and your company.
I'm Emily Shepard. I'm based in Birmingham, Alabama. I've been in digital media and marketing for over 20 years. Started out with a division of Time Inc. Was the first SEO editor for myrecipes.com. And I now work a good bit with an agency called HYPR Local, but also with other various clients as well, doing SEO consulting, some paid ads, variety of website builds, different things. So,
Jack of all trades. We're excited to have your perspective on the podcast with us. Thanks for joining us. Megan, please.
Yeah, howdy y'all. I'm Megan Bond, owner of Panther City Marketing. We are based in Fort Worth. We've been around for 9 years now. We work primarily with local businesses and help them with all of their digital marketing. Primarily, that's going to be SEO, websites, and paid advertising.
Well, thank you for joining us. I'm excited to have your perspective. I think it's going to be fun to dive into the mixed reputation of agencies and get all 3 of your perspectives on what you've seen. So again, I appreciate it. Ashley, last but not least, tell us about yourself and your agency.
Yeah, I'm Ashley Robinson. I'm also from Alabama, Emily. Originally in Alabama, we have office in Alabama, but I currently live in Nashville. And we are digitally focused in the legal industry. That's the only vertical we've served since day one. And your kind of typical lead gen activities, website, SEO, paid ads are our main offerings.
That's going to be a fun one to dissect as well, because legal has been targeted by so many marketing agencies because everyone felt that lawyers have the money to pay for marketing. Whether or not they were good or bad marketers is a bigger question, right? So I'm going to throw this question out to the group here, and whoever wants to jump in first to answer it, please just jump in. We want a pretty open conversation, so feel free to interrupt if you need to. But agencies do have a mixed reputation today. I was on a podcast or a YouTube video that I was watching of a physical therapy industry, and they were discussing like whether or not you should pay for paid ads. And the people that ran the YouTube video were essentially coaching physical therapy businesses. And when they got to the marketing standpoint and working with marketing agencies, I was shocked with how negative they spoke about marketing agencies, because I was like, man, they've worked with some really bad agencies. So I want to hear from the 3 of you just what that perception of marketing agencies today, is it earned or is it misunderstood? Help me understand what clients are feeling as they've had these experiences.
I think clients are completely valid in those experiences. Working with different clients and seeing some of the agencies, it's very mixed results. There's a lot of people out there who are really, really good at sales and don't know how to do anything. And a hard thing about marketing is all you need is an internet connection and a laptop. And then all of a sudden you can be an agency owner, whether you know anything about marketing or not. Emily, I see you shaking your head over there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that it just depends. I think it's very just agency specific. It depends on the people who are working there. I try to focus a lot of transparency. That's actually one of my biggest I guess call it a fear or a pet peeve, is I vehemently don't want to be known that way. I want people to come away saying she did everything she could, it wasn't just, because I think sometimes people just feel like their money is just taken and they don't know what's happening. And especially with SEO, where it can be hard, or it's a long runway to results, or it can be hard to really know what's happening. With social, they can just go and see if you're posting, it can have very quick opinions. But with SEO, it's a little bit more esoteric if you don't know what they're doing. So I think it's an easy place for agencies to do that kind of behavior. But I think there's definitely ones out there that are working really hard to do good work and to have good results.
I'll second everything. My comment when this conversation is brought up is, I do think that what's underestimated is the power that the agency can bring to your business, meaning the bank of business that we pull from every day. So for me, we only serve one vertical. So if I'm going to hire a solo entrepreneur to manage my marketing, or an agency, there are pros and cons. I do have more overhead. I have to pay for my 12 employees. I have to pay for my 2 offices. I do. And that's basic business that you understand and I understand as a client. But what you're missing out on, maybe not working with an agency, is the other firms that we serve. And I can say, here's what I see working in this industry, or for us, we're only one industry. So in this practice area or this geo area. So there are pros and cons. Yeah, there are bad actors in the game. There are in every industry. Of course, I am biased, and I think that's what clients might be missing out on, is that bank that Megan, Emily, and I have of pulling from our clients that we see every day.
I had an opinion that packages were like a really bad way to buy SEO for quite some time. I had a lot of agency founders on the podcast, and many of them left larger agencies that they felt like were delivering a very generic SEO package with very little thought that went into it. So I had this perspective that custom SEO was like the absolute way to go, because someone was going to give you exactly what they felt like you needed. And I had another agency join on that gave me a very unique perspective too, that custom is a very terrible way to perform SEO, because it lets the customer try to decide what they want. And there's a lot of like collaboration that needs to go into picking the right tactics, when realistically, if an agency has really defined what works in an industry, a package can work extremely well, because they're now telling you what you want instead of wondering or trying to figure out what you need. Every one of you has a different pricing model. It's likely that's the case. I don't know them all very off the top of my head, but tell me, from the sake of like custom SEO and packages, what is the best fit for a customer? And I know this is not a one size fits all, but from your perspectives, do you guys go custom? Do you go packages? And if so, why?
Yeah, I can jump in here. As we go packages, and it's because, again, we serve one vertical. So we've been able to package up what we've seen over the years work best. We've done the custom, and it was just not efficient or effective for the client. It seemed a little too random, which is really difficult to retroactively measure what might have worked. So we have packages, and it's based off of the client's goals and those goals. So again, for us, we only serve this vertical. So the first questions we're ever asking someone is average client value, what is their geos, who are they targeting, what is their gross revenue, what do they try to get to? So we're asking a ton of questions to help us cipher down into, here's usually we're bringing 2 recommended packages based on, again, those goals and needs. And often when we hear back, I might not can afford that, that's fine, but we do have to readjust your goals, those gross revenue goals, or number of new matters per month. So, and then you're both able to kind of come to a middle ground of, we might have to adjust our goals, but then it does fit into this package level.
Megan and Emily, what are you guys doing with pricing?
Yeah, I stopped doing any custom proposals years ago, and that was one of the best things I could do just as an agency owner. So the execution on everything is obviously custom, right? Like, especially for SEO, every client comes to you from a different starting point with a different website. Maybe they're on different platforms, paid ads and stuff. It's a little bit more straightforward, but it's always custom execution. But having packages is easier for the client to understand what those packages are. It's easier for us to follow our SOPs and have our plans and execute. When you do things custom or whenever a client convinces me to go outside of that, a lot of times that's where problems arise. Things accidentally get forgotten because it's not our standard way of doing things. And then, like was mentioned before, the client sometimes thinks they know what they need, but they don't. Like, I can't tell you, my favorite example is I can't tell you how many times someone comes to me and they're like, I just need to like crush it on organic social, but they don't have any time to record any content. They don't have any time to help me with anything. They want me to come up with everything. And I'm like, no, this is not what you need. Like, let's get you some leads. Let's get you some traffic. Let's get you some revenue. You don't have the time to do organic social. Let's figure out what works for your business. So they have this idea of what they want, but really it's like, let's go find this proven process that I know will bring in money. And then if we want to scale from there or change it later on, we can. Inevitably, that never happens. But just doing custom is, I guess if you're an individual freelancer, that's okay. But having packages with this is what we're providing, this is what we're doing helps keep my team on track, make sure nothing falls through the tracks, and then also establishes expectations for everybody on what the client's going to get and what we're going to provide.
Emily, I've seen you shaking your head. Yes. Like there's a lot of agreement here.
I do a lot of active listening. I agree with everything y'all said. The agency that I currently contract with, I would say, is doing a lot of custom, but that's something where I've really been pushing for all the reasons y'all have said. You know, we really need to standardize our offerings for clarity so they know what they're getting. We know what we're supposed to deliver on. It's a little bit easier. I hate the word scale, but it's a little bit easier to have all these other clients for the customer too, if everything's standardized and everybody knows essentially what they're getting. But with really taking them where they're at and really analyzing that on the front end and saying, okay, this is what we would recommend for you. But I think it benefits everybody to have better just standardization across what you do.
There was a question that we asked on the podcast pretty often, and it was essentially, does SEO genius matter more, or does operational excellence matter more in running a marketing agency? And I think it aligns really well with how you guys answered this question, which is like SEO genius is great, but if you don't have operational excellence and things are falling through the crack because you're just not following through on the process, the agency model falls apart pretty quick. And I think that's a cool way of kind of solidifying the fact that like the packages have a really valuable purpose. And Ashley and Megan, I think even Emily, you guys talked about like the expectations of the customer. And sometimes it's so much more important to be aligned with their expectations than to be genius in your fulfillment, because they just need to know that you're doing your work on a monthly basis to move the needle for them successfully. And the genius, whether that was maybe in the sales process, I guess, but not always appreciated as much in operational excellence, right? They just want to see that the work is truly being done, the integrity there.
Yeah, I can get on a rabbit hole sometimes on the tech side, and just people's eyes are glazing over. I'm like, nobody cares, Emily. They just. So yeah, and I think it's important as you are adding on more clients, if those operations aren't dialed in at the beginning, before, and I don't know how big y'all's agencies are, but as you start to add on more, it's really not a linear curve of complication. It seems like it's more, even if somebody has a smaller package, it's still a client you've got to think about, and so to me, just having operations dialed in really well as soon as you can allows you to keep doing quality work as you get bigger.
I'm curious too, from like the learning standpoint of like Ashley having locked in legal, right? Like there's the intent behind every marketing agency. I feel like I shouldn't say every marketing agency. Most marketing agencies is real, that they really want to help the customer. But there's a complication that if you've never been in the industry before, you don't know the correct keywords. You don't know the right paid ad terms to go after. And even with the best of intent, you spend 6 months trying to figure it out with a small budget and you're still a little confused. And I'm curious if that's where a lot of the I've been burned wasn't necessarily burned, but their agency lacked the data to give them the success that they probably would with more experience. How does that, is that align with what you guys are seeing from other agencies?
Yeah, that's what we hear often. So, sorry, Megan. Do you want to chime in, Megan?
Yeah, I mean, mine's just real quick. I don't even know that it's the data, but like the client management of, again, like the client will come and they say, I need this. And that's, you have to, like, I always go, okay, you need this to get what? And then I look at what do they want to get? And then how do we get them there? And then tell them what they really need.
Yeah. They don't really, for us, they don't often know even how to communicate, which again is why we talk high level. Where are you at and where are you trying to go? The firm I was on with this morning, she's right at $1 million. She's trying to get to 3 in the next 18 months. Great. Now I can decipher that. I can break that down into average client value per practice area. She's a state and business law. What is your geo? Who are you trying to target? What does your team look like? Can you handle that much business? I need super high level, and then we can break it down from there to understand what she needs. So to go back to your original question, I do think for us, often they've been burned because they've worked with a general agency that might not specialize in legal, especially on the paid ad side. It is, I just see some, and I don't think the intent is there, but I see some poor practices on paid ads because it's just a different beast. The legal industry is a different beast. When I started in this niche, I've only ever done legal because very early on recognized the negative impacts of messing something up for our clients. I mean, they are going to face some sort of bar violation if you do not know what you're doing and if you're putting some sort of misinformation on their website. And again, paid ads is a big one there. So for us, I would say number one, it's probably they've worked with an agency, especially on the paid ad side, that doesn't work with legal. And then I also think they feel like they've been burned because the lack of transparency and reporting. I don't know about Emily and Megan, this what you guys hear, but that is like, they don't know how to even explain that. But the more they talk, it's like, okay, that is what they're saying too, is I just can't quantify what is the ROI. So we try to do that as often as we can.
Yeah, I agree with that too. As far as the report, sorry, Koa, as far as the reporting, I got really into analytics really, really early when it just sort of started hitting because I just was fascinated about how we can track and see what's actually, because there really was not very much visibility into anything prior to that. And that's a similar pain point that a lot of our clients have, is they just feel like they're just dumping money into what. And so I think being able to show what's working, what's not, how you're adjusting, and where their money's going is super helpful for building trust and longevity with a client.
Yeah, I was going to jump in and say that I I did an assessment for someone where I viewed their last monthly reporting system from their past SEO vendor. And it had a really good description of the personality of the account manager and a picture of her and a bunch of stuff that had nothing to do with any of the work that they did on the monthly basis. It didn't list any work done, but it had a few metrics in there and a personality report. And I was like, I don't know if this is who you want to be working with. And I think it was only 6 months later that they closed up shop. And I was like, this is all making more sense. So I want to dive in a little deeper into the complications of maybe running an agency. So I think that a lot of people don't realize just how hard the operations is, or how fragmented your mind can get as you're taking so many different strategies out at the same time. So I wanted to give it a real perspective of how complicated it is to run an agency. So, I mean, give us a quick view of the reality of running an agency and some of the perspectives that you think most people don't understand from the outside about the complications of it. And I'll maybe lead off with one that I think is pretty fascinating. Data is not as clear as many people like to believe it is. The traffic you're getting to your website, whether it's from Ahrefs or SEMrush, that's not always the true information of what's happening on a website, and marketing companies have to navigate all of that. It's just a lot of unknown, and they're trying to translate it into functional business for their customers. I want to hear from you. What else are you guys seeing?
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, I'll add one. The inaccuracies or the unorganized operations on our client side. We can't control what our clients do, right? And I mean, the amount of times we have had a difficult conversation or even been fired when we've done nothing but grow the firm, and it's just their tracking is so poor, or their internal operations is so poor, or their staff are just not trained, or they don't answer the phone, or they're often what we do, it's a really emotion-based thing. And so their staff doesn't necessarily have the emotional intelligence or empathy to guide and navigate this person who's just called about this divorce or this really difficult probate case. And so that's a huge frustration, is we have done everything right at times, and it's just not enough because the firm is not prepared. So how we have combat that is the more we've grown and the more secure in ourselves that we've grown, the more we've just said no to clients if they do not have the operations in place.
That's an interesting one, because consulting and marketing seem to, like, business consulting and a marketing agency seem to overlap in a way that bleeds labor out of the marketing agency in a way they don't necessarily see it, and it can cut into the margins extremely quickly when you start chasing every tiny mistake, right? That seems to be one of the biggest problems I think I've seen with agencies is they want to, that package is kind of set, except for all the stuff they do beyond the package that it's not tracked or not appreciated by the customer. That's an interesting perspective. I think even the sales side of things, we've seen more agencies diving down where they're actually like getting into the sales calls of their clients and actually understanding whether or not they're following through on all the leads that you've provided to them so that the ROI is actually accurate, instead of them not calling leads and blaming you for the lack of business, which
That was something that I learned very early on, is that, like, when I first started, I thought, oh, I can just bring people leads, did my job, I did the marketing, they do the sales, I can walk away. And it does not work like that. And now it's, when clients are struggling, I'll go all the way down, and, was still been drafting an email all day for a client who has a 6% close rate. And I'm like, he's not happy. And I'm like, okay, well, we have a 6% close rate. The issue here isn't in the leads. Like, our leads are qualified, but they're not getting scheduled and they're not getting closed. And so we need to see, like, and I see this frequently, there's an operations issue or a sales issue, and they'll go to marketing. Oh, if we get more leads, that'll solve the problem. But at a 6% close rate, you can have all the leads you want. It's not going to solve anything.
So tell them, like, I'm not happy either. I think this is a good chance to transition into the KPIs that we've seen changing a lot with agencies as well. For a long time, it was clicks, it was impressions, it was traffic, but it seems like those have been disregarded by many agencies today as just not what the customers are really looking for. Like, the clients are looking for more transparency, and it seems to drive into revenue, or at least leads that are created for them to close, which would then depend on their close rate, whether or not they're happy. But how have your teams evolved with the kind of the metrics that are changing around KPI? Like, have you moved away from keyword rankings? Is that still a major part of what you're tracking for your customers? Give us a perspective on how you track success today.
We work with a lot of local service businesses, so it's more visibility, and definitely leads, but just being able to say, like, we're moving more in the map pack rankings. It's probably the main thing that they look at. And then I send out the reports, and I feel like probably no one is looking at them, and I spend a lot of time making these reports and telling them what I see and what I think and what did well, what we're going to do. And I feel like, and that's just, they're really busy because we work with a lot of smaller companies that just, they know they need it. And they're like, great, it looks better. But that, I guess that's what we focus on, but that's not legal.
I actually really like that. We're going to have to come back to that in a second, because that not looking at the reporting and the trust they want to have with an agency is I think that's a pretty big piece of the tracking and KPI stuff. I'm going to come back to that in a second. Megan and Ashley, how are you guys tracking success at your agencies?
It's definitely changing. I'm having a lot of conversations right now around switching from looking at just rankings to looking at traffic and conversions. Cause it's easy, we look at rankings and we'll start there, but then it's like, well, okay, but traffic isn't increasing. So that's great that we're ranking here, but the traffic isn't increasing. So what are we doing wrong? But then also, I feel like tracking those KPIs is getting harder and harder. I feel like SEMrush is getting less accurate over time, and the keyword tracking tools, like, I'll get emails. It's like, you're up, you're down, you're ranking in the top 100, you're ranking number 1. You're not ranking in the top 100 at all, like, week after week. And so it's trying to manage all of that with tools that seem to be getting less accurate, and then having the whole AI part of it too, where, AI is coming in, there's not really great tools to establish how are we ranking in AI search and driving traffic that way. Long answer, I don't know. We're doing our best, just trying to focus on, what are those leads and what are those conversions. But the longer I do this, the further down the funnel we get. And I think it's good because we get better data. So it's, like when I first started, Google Ads was all about what's your cost per click. And right now I don't really care that much about my cost per click. I care about what's my cost per conversion, but we didn't have that data before to optimize towards. And so we're getting better and worse data at the same time, I kind of feel like, for what we're looking at. But then trying to work with the client if they look at the reporting, which is, I feel like half the time I spend 2 hours on a report, email it to them, and then a week later they're like, hey, so how's everything going?
So similar, further and further down the funnel. We have a reporting dashboard our clients can look at 24/7. They never look at it, but we meet with our clients every month. And so it's kind of a forced opportunity that they have to look at it with their account manager. And we're tracking events, key events, total users, active users, sessions, engagement rate. Ultimately trying to track that conversion. Tracking these key events is helpful of clicks, scrolling, videos, starting a video, watching a video halfway through, because what we're trying to help them understand, what we're tracking is the overall engagement and the behavior of our clients. So that's helped. That's pretty new for us. That's helped a little bit. And ultimately what we're trying to do is prove the ROI. We all know that's incredibly challenging. Local service ads, it's a pretty easy line-to-line comparison. But after that, we kind of lose them. But which is why when they come into the agency, we get a lot of numbers up front. So as we're growing, we can compare the difference.
So one thing that like a few of you brought up there was that the customers, all three of you mentioned this, they're not viewing the reporting dashboards. And that's like, we saw that, I've seen that throughout my career as well. They maybe viewed it for the first month, maybe the second month, and then they just stopped looking at it completely. I think it's a sign of what's changing a lot in marketing today is that the marketing agency's goals are so much deeper than they used to be that you become like the fractional CMO role, I'd say, is what you're seeing really trending on like LinkedIn and other jobs, is that the marketing agencies are positioning themselves as like employees, and they're having to be more involved in the company's decisions that are influencing marketing, because SEO as a service is evolving into something that's far more brand related. So it touches on content across all avenues, and you're trying to connect all that multi-touch content and how that's translating into leads. And it's just become far more complex than the KPIs. So I asked you a very tough question, which is how you're tracking it, when in reality it's coming from everywhere. And I think asking the customer is like almost the most effective way to collect where it truly came from. But they often have no idea how they actually got to your website either. So you're just dealing with really inaccurate information. I'm going to transition this complicated like consulting aspect of marketing into what should a customer look for when they're trying to find the right agency to work with. Because we're talking about a lot of stuff that's hard to like really quantify or put into words with like how to find the right agency. But I think there's often a lot of red flags that a client can look for in an agency that would tell them that they're probably not the right one for them. And so from your experiences, I want to hear from you. What are some of those red flags that you notice that you would avoid if you were a client shopping for a marketing agency?
If they haven't been in business very long, that's the number one red flag, which is hard because we all started somewhere. But I feel like agencies are in and out of business in 6 months all the time because people, again, they have a computer and the internet and they think they can run an agency. They don't know what they're doing, and they burn clients who then think marketing doesn't work. So that's the number one thing I would look at is like, how many clients do you have, average client tenure, and how long have you been in business?
Yeah, those are good. I would say, what does reporting look like? What data are you going to be using to guide my strategy? And then I want to know about the customer service piece. My background is more on the customer service side. I've started a marketing agency, but my background is more customer service sales. But I would want to say quantify the customer service to me as well. How often am I speaking with someone? Are you just sending over the reports? Is someone going to read them to me? I don't know if there's good or bad. I just want to know, be upfront with me, because I do think it's such an oversold part of I'm gonna speak to someone at your agency every week, and then that's just not that's not actually how it happens. So those would be the three things I would ask.
I definitely agree with the service piece for sure. And I think even little things, how quick do they get back to you? Do they do what they say? All those just basic business practices that I think show that are green flags for any business, I think are extra important in this. And then also, I would say, do they ask a lot of questions? Like to Ashley's point, do they invest a lot on the front end trying to understand what your pain points truly are and how they can meet you there, sort of in that fractional CMO role? Or are they just trying to get you to sign and say, oh, yeah, we can do this? And how do they speak about SEO in particular? Because that is sort of the black box to a lot of people, where they know what paid ads are, they know what social is. But are they able to speak to you about how they're going to help you with SEO on I'm escaping the word, but where you can understand it and you know what they're going to do? Or are they just saying, oh, we're going to do some SEO? Like, how do they explain it to you on a basic level? What does that actually mean? Because a lot of people just hear that word and they're like, okay, yeah, I need that. But I think the good agencies will actually outline for you what they're going to do for SEO and what that's going to mean for your business, or what the goals are.
That's interesting, because I've been part of sales calls where someone that didn't know SEO very well used like a good analogy, to try to make it make sense for a client. And that's great. But if it came down to the monthly reporting and you're asking a few questions and they're giving you analogies instead of any details at that point, you'd start wondering if they're actually doing their job or if they're just good at telling a story.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, I have one final question for the three of you, and it's just asking you to tell me the future. So don't be too worried about it. Agencies are changing. I think the models are changing. The way we fulfill is changing. A lot of agencies are adopting AI to an extent that maybe some agencies would say they're not doing it well, and some agencies are adopting AI and trying to make it very personalized with a lot of high context information they feed into it. So there's a lot of contrast in the way the agencies exist today. I'm even getting the social media ads for 100% AI agencies where they can just sign me up and make me successful with with very little work. I think those are fun too. But I want to see from the three of you, where do you predict your agency or agencies will change the most over the next couple years? Whether that's in the operational excellence or whether that's in the SEO genius side of things, where do you see your own agency or other agencies evolving the most?
I could probably should have a much more intellectual answer here, but just thinking off the top of my head, I think, and maybe you're asking more technically in terms of what we do and the product we serve.
I can try to rephrase the question a bit too. Actually, clients have the power to do a lot of stuff on their own, whether that's the technical SEO and building out a website through AI tools today, whether that's creating their blog posts, their GBP posts, and other things. They can utilize content creation to a high extent using these AI tools. But it feels like they're given a lot of power and don't understand quite how to wield it. And I'm curious, from like the agency's perspective, your clients are asking or saying things because they're being guided by AI strategy. And it feels like agencies are in a unique spot where they're having to change the way they communicate, the way they strategize, the way they analyze. And I'm curious, from what you've seen with your clients, with your customers, where do you feel like you've had to make the biggest pivots and kind of trying to predict how that's going to affect your agency over the next year or two?
I think the tighter the niche or the more specialized agencies are going to have a little bit different outcome. I'm not saying it's going to be an easier outcome, but a general agency I think it's going to be hard to keep up with technology because the client can do so much. So even niche within a specialty within SEO, you prioritize one segment of the SEO, the organic component, because I do believe our users are becoming more educated, whether they're right or wrong. They are understanding more, and so they might be a little bit more prone to go with an agency who's super niche and understanding of a very small segment of this organic piece. And then on the client side, maybe what I was referencing just a moment ago, I think for us, what it's going to do is just build an even bigger gap in between that smaller, for us, law firm, and those smaller players are going to find agencies who are serving just their 500K or less, and we are going to fill. I think we're going to fill the need where we're just serving the bigger firms who are saying, I don't trust a fragmented components of people to do this at my agency. I'm going to go hire, or at my firm, I'm going to go hire an agency. So that's what I think. Now, I've never been great at predicting the future. So,
Megan and Emily, what are your thoughts on how things are changing?
I mean, I think things are changing, but they're staying the same. Like, where we've always excelled is helping to people go beyond that. So like, my clients hire me not because they want to do it themselves, but because they understand that they're better suited doing whatever their business is rather than trying to do marketing. And I feel like clients are actually becoming, as AI increases, marketing is becoming more complex and it's becoming more confusing for people trying to do it on their own. Because it's not as simple as it was. And there's, so many more parts to SEO and where you're showing up and how you're doing it. And, it's not like, oh yeah, we'll just do some keyword stuffing on the homepage and call it a day and we're good. And finding an agency who understands the business, understands their unique selling proposition, and puts together a strategy and adjusts that over time that fits what they need, which is what we've done and what we'll continue to do, will serve us well. It's just how we go about that is going to change. I think it's great because I think there's a lot of opportunities, like Ashley said, for those smaller companies who may not be able to hire an agency yet, where they have more tools and more power to bootstrap it until they get to the point when they can hire an agency. So I think that part is changing. But for a good agency owner, I think understanding, what do they need? What sets them apart? How can we fulfill their needs, help them close their clients, and doing that well with a well thought out strategy is going to continue to do well no matter what the AI environment looks like going forward.
I think I would say operations for sure, both for the agency itself, trying to streamline, there's all kinds of bottlenecks and inefficiencies, I think, where that can probably step in really well. That's really my favorite use of AI, is trying to tighten that up. But what I think is interesting that I've thought about is, I've done a lot of, when Squarespace came out, and I do a lot of Squarespace websites, and there's a lot of haters on Squarespace, but I've liked it and I've had good results. And that made it easier for, say, like a one-person company to have their own website without hiring a developer pretty easily. But there's so much context and I think wisdom from somebody who's worked online for a long time of just knowing various things. Like, even there's been times I have to get in there on WordPress and do something in the code because it's not immediately clear when you're trying to use a WYSIWYG editor of why it's not working. And so I think sometimes knowing those fundamentals and knowing the theory and what's behind all the stuff that the AI is saying, I think is where having people is still going to be so essential, because I think we need people to evaluate the output. And all these different tools do make it easier, but I think without context and without sort of knowing what the goals are and just all the history that experience gives people, I just think you can get off in a weird place pretty easily. So I think it's been oversold a little bit as far as how much individuals can really use it for their own marketing, but I think there's a lot of ways to leverage it on the agency side to improve efficiencies and improve operations.
There's been an underlying theme, I think, through this recording session, that we have, like, Ashley, your perspective of like having a niche and like trying to lock it down so that you can understand it at a high level. Megan, your perspective there at the end is like the customer is so busy that they don't necessarily have the time, even if they wanted to learn how to do their own marketing. Like they can't spend hours trying to figure out how to set up the technology to build a website for themselves. It's just too much time wasted and not a good ROI. Then Emily, the operations side of it and like streamlining it and making it so that like the customer, from my perspective, it's like making it really easy on the customer. All of those, I thought I was tying back to the fact that no one wants to view their reporting dashboard. And essentially they're looking for an expert that they can trust on a monthly basis that they don't have to babysit. And I think that's what's so interesting to me about marketing today is the AI tools have enabled them to like feel like they're better than the startup agency. But when they start making a mess of things themselves, they're still looking for someone that can help them clean it up. And that's where I feel like the evolution of the agency is now maybe dissolving what you've talked about, which is like the startup, like everyone with a laptop and the internet feels like they can start an agency. It's watered down that person's value so much because they can bypass that level of expertise within like a week of studying inside of their AI tools. And so I think that it's uniquely positioning all three of you as like so much better. Like it's like kind of washing out the lower half of the marketing world and saying work with someone that understands it at a higher level, because what you're doing is just getting you to the point that they can take you to the next level. I think that's what I mean, I hope that translates well enough what the three of you said, but I think that there's just that trust. And I'm also connecting it to like personalities almost. Like AI is connecting websites as almost like a personality. It understands the user so well that it's like, hey, you're in legal. You've tried to do this yourself. Maybe you should reach out to Ashley, because what they've done for other people is that they know what you're going through. They can help you through this. It's almost like, I say, it's almost like speed dating. It's just trying to find you the right person that's going to work with you the best. And their personality comes out through the website now far more than it ever did. And I think that's where content and SEO has evolved in a really cool way too. So I went long-winded there. I was excited about finding that connection because I do feel like there's that really unique way of marketing agencies connecting deeply with their customers. I appreciate all three of you joining us. We're excited to have you on as guests of SEO On Air, and hopefully we'll have you back again. Thank you, guys.